Welcome to another episode of Million Dollar Stories, where we get to interview authors all over the world. This interview I'm very excited about because we're actually publishing a book for a surgeon who is helping other surgeons invest in real estate. Now, the guy that I have on today, his name is Dr. Cory Fawcett, and he has written many books regarding starting practices, investing, and getting out of debt. So we're going to talk about his one book called The Doctor's Guide to Real Estate Investing for Busy Professionals. Thanks so much for being here, Dr. Cory.
Hey, Mike, thanks for inviting me. Love to talk.
Well, what is the genesis of the book? Why did you write this book? I've seen a need after talking to other surgeons when it comes to, maybe keeping a little bit of money in the bank rather than giving it away into taxes. And, you make so much money, but there's so much college debt built up that you don't start making money until later on in your career. So you're getting people off on the right foot and growing their net worth, it sounds like. So what is the genesis behind this book?
Well, I've been interested in investing since I was a kid. That's just been an interest of mine. Okay. Long ago, my wife and I used to teach a class on money management called Crown Financial Ministries. And I would talk to doctors all the time about this. I mean, when you're operating on somebody and you're standing over that body working, and you got to talk about something, right?
Yeah,
So this is what
right.
we talk about. And, you don't want to talk about the appendix. You want to talk about something fun while you're busy working, or in the doctor's on. So I started investing in real estate like my grandmother did.
Wow.
When I was a teenager, I was her oldest grandson. I became the helper around the property. When they needed some extra hand, they would call me. I'd come help them out and do. So I learned all these things that you do about real estate. And I learned that my grandmother, when she got older and my grandfather had passed away, she didn't need a job because she had money coming in from all these real estate pieces that she owned. And I took note of that. So later on in my life, after I became debt free, paid off all of my student loans, paid off my house, I was debt free. All that money used to be going to debt. My wife and I started talking about, well, what will we do with that money now? Where would we put it? We're already filling up our 401ks and our IRAs. Now we have this debt money that we used to pay. Where's it going to go? And I decided now's the time for us to start our real estate investing, just like my grandmother had done.
Excellent.
And so we began. And so many doctors would hear, what do you mean you own property? Who runs it for you? And I would say, well, I do. I was managing 64 rental units as a full-time general surgeon, and I could do
What?
it on less than 10 hours a month. If you do it right and you automate everything, it's a simple, there's a reason they call it passive income. Okay. And so people couldn't believe that I could manage 64 rental units and be a full-time general surgeon. And so they would keep asking me these questions and asking and asking. And eventually I says, you know what? I got to put this in a book. So I could just say, oh, you want to know all the answers? Just read this. We don't have to talk about it for an hour. Just read my book and you'll know why a busy professional would want to do it and why they can. And then I went on to develop an online course that would help you learn to automate everything about your real estate investing, because there's this false notion that people get that they have to do everything themselves.
Right.
And I would tell the doctor, okay, patient comes into the room, into the office. Do you greet them at the door? And they, well, no. Okay. Do you help them fill out their intake forms? No. Well, do you take their blood pressure? No. Do you put them in the room? No. Do you clean the room up after they're gone? No. When they're being booked for surgery, are you the one calling the operating room and setting everything up? No. Do you call the insurance company and make sure everything is taken care of so this is all pre-authorized? No. And after several of these questions, and I asked them, well, what the heck are you there for? You don't do anything. And the thing is they realize in their own office, that's when the light bulb goes off.
Yep.
In their own office, the only thing they do in that business is the most important piece that requires their expertise. They are the doctor, they are the physician, they help the patient with that particular little thing. The rest of the stuff, they have people for that. Well, why don't you treat your real estate the same way?
Mm-hmm.
A doctor knows how to run an office, but then they buy one rental property and they think they have to go over there every time something's wrong, and they have to answer every phone call, and they got to show the place to everybody, and where did you get this notion that when you run a business, you have to do all of it when you already have a business you run and you know you don't do that?
Right.
So if you could translate that, and that's why I was able to run 60, to actually be the manager of 64 rental units and be a full-time surgeon, because it doesn't take any time if you do it right.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start putting on that hat that says, hey, I own this, I have to do everything. And that's how my grandmother did it. And I learned that's not the way to do it. She refused to hire a property manager because that cost money. And she wouldn't pay any money. She didn't realize what it could save. She only saw that it costs money if I hire it, and I'm here to make money. So why would I hire those people? I'm not going to do that. And so I learned that I can make a lot of money as a surgeon, and I can let my property make a lot of money on its own.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened in my life was my property. I actually did one of my blog articles on comparing my 401k investing and the results, and my real estate investing and the results.
Oh, I would love to read
And
this, because this is an eye-opening experience when you start to see the difference in time, right? So tell me
right.
about what was the result that
Well,
you can
it
share?
was a who wins. This is a real life comparison. Almost every time you see somebody doing that, they give you fake numbers. They make up some numbers. Well, this is what real estate does on average. This is what stock market does on average. So if you do this, I didn't do that. I said, this is how much money I put into the 401k. And I picked my 401k as the comparison. This is how much money I put in. This is when I put it in. This is what it's worth today. What does that chart look like? I started investing in real estate later, several years later than I started my 401k. And I didn't put much money into the real estate because I bought almost everything with no money down. And so
Right.
that's another myth that's dispelled. You don't need a lot of money to get investing in real estate. People think you have to have enough money to buy the whole thing. That's just not true. So I invested for a shorter amount of time in real estate. I put less money into the real estate than I put into my 401k. And yet the real estate total value was more than double what the 401k had in it. So
Incredible.
real estate beat it by a long margin. Now,
Plus,
I
you get
don't
a tax
advocate that
advantage with
people,
that real estate that you
oh,
don't get with the 401k.
well, there's some tax advantages with the 401k that you don't get with the real estate too. I mean, they both have some tax advantaging to them, but they're different tax advantaging
Mm-hmm.
that goes along with there. And so I don't advocate, because I know my real estate makes a whole lot more money than the stock market and the 401k, but I don't advocate that you invest everything in your real estate, because I think you should be diversified. So I maxed out my 401k, and all my leftover money went to real estate and buying real estate and paying down the real estate loans, because every time you paid down a loan, your cash flow went up. And I was after enough money for the real estate to take care of me in my retirement years. And so cash flow was what I was after. And so paying down a debt increases, mortgage goes away, cash flow goes up. That's what happened in my life. I paid off my house, suddenly had all this money. What am I going to do with it? What a good problem to have.
Well, Robert Kiyosaki, have you read any of his books, by the way?
I've read, I think, all of his books. I
Yeah,
see
it
Rich
sounds
Dad,
like
Poor Dad circulating back there.
changed my
That's one
life.
of my favorite books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read all of his books. I don't think all of his books are as good as that.
That's a game
Uh,
changer, yeah, which was actually
yeah.
ghostwritten by a woman named Sharon Lecter. So the combination of them two really did wonders for the world, for sure. but he
The
says
rest of his
something.
books are kind of a takeoff on that one was really successful. What else could we say? And so I found one other one that I think it was called the Cash Flow Quadrants that
Yeah.
was pretty good, but the rest of them weren't as good as his original. His original really had the meat in it, and the rest of them were kind of capitalizing that people were looking for more. So definitely of all his books, that one you need to read first.
That's the one. And
That's
that
one of
changed
my
my life.
favorite books.
I went to
Yes.
college. I think I was a senior in college. My employer at the time, he was the only millionaire that I knew, gave me that book. And it was the only book that I fell in love with from start to finish. And I can't thank him enough for giving it to me, but it put me on a whole different path. And one of the quotes that he says, I don't think it's in that book, but it was in one of his speeches, talks about how rich people have high paying jobs, wealthy people have assets. And maybe, there's a lot of listeners out there that are not doctors. So you would think that doctors have enough money and they're going to be secure for the rest of their life. What would you say to those people? What have you noticed? Do doctors usually have, number one, a lot of debt, but number two, they have a very high expense lifestyle, right? Where they can't show up in a Honda Civic to certain meetings. They have to go to certain events and have to look a certain way. So maybe they're not as wealthy as you think. And that is why it's so smart for doctors to diversify, create wealth through real estate. Have you noticed anything? Are there any stats that you can relay to our audience?
I don't think I have a stat that I can tell you, but I can tell you from experience, everybody thinks doctors are rich, including doctors. Yeah. And it's not true. Okay. Many doctors, we come out of, in my book on eliminating debt, I talk about a disease that we get called diabetic neuropathy. And what that means is that you've become so accustomed to being in debt that you've just become numb to it.
Wow.
And we spent so many years, this is what it looks like in medical school. I don't have enough money. It's $50,000 a year to pay for this. I can't work because I'm busy at school, so I can borrow this money. And you sign a piece of paper and you get $50,000 and nothing happens. Nobody comes after you to break your legs to pay the bills. Nothing happens. And then the next year, another 50,000, just sign right here. Nothing happens. So after many years of when I want money, I just sign the papers, get a loan, nothing happens. But then they come out and they're finishing all their training finally. They have this pile of debt.
What's the average number? 200,000?
Somewhere
minimum?
around 250.
Yeah, there you go.
Is the average $250,000. But there's people with like $800,000 of debt from doing this. And they come out and now the debt's due. But they have this diabetic neuropathy. So they get out and then this big income comes in because now they got their job. Now suddenly they might be in a highly paid specialty and they're making $600,000 a year. They went from making $50,000 a year as a resident and not having to pay any of their debts to making $600,000 a year and still not having to pay any debts yet because there's a time delay before the debt starts coming due. And so in that time delay period, when they're making a big income, guess what they do?
Car.
They borrow a bunch of more money because you just sign the papers and you get it and nothing happens. And so they buy a big house and they buy 2 fancy cars and they buy all the stuff that goes inside a big house. And they bought a big house on the water and they need a boat. So they buy a boat. And then, the car they bought's not big enough to pull a boat. So they get another one. Yes. And so they pile up all this debt all of a sudden. And then their student loans come due. Now they got to start paying on that $300,000 of student loans they have. And that breaks the bank.
Mm-hmm. But they're it's very easy for them to get loans simply because of that high income job. Banks love that. Oh, you're a bankable person. Let me give you whatever you want. There you go.
They think you're rich. So because they think, in fact, my blog article that comes out tomorrow, I don't know when people are going to get to hear this, but it's the Thursday before Thanksgiving when this is going to come out, is about the article. I'm rebutting the article that Taylor Swift is now a billionaire. Because the article, when I read it, I said, well, you don't even have evidence that she's a billionaire. what the article was about is that so far now she has earned $1 billion in her lifetime. And they have no idea what she spent. They have no idea what assets she has. Only one of the items in there was part of an actual net worth, and that was the value of her portfolio of albums. Okay, that's part of her net worth. But counting that her Eras tour made $500 million doesn't count towards saying
Right.
somebody is a billionaire. There was a high income, but there's a high expense
For
that
sure.
she had to pay. How much of that $500 million actually went into her pocket? And then how much of it did she actually keep? Because I'm sure she spent a lot of it. Takes a lot of money to fly to a football game every weekend and then fly back to Brazil for a concert and then fly to a football game in the United States and then fly to Brazil. I mean, she spends a lot of money. So the article was all about how we mistake a high income for a great net worth. We mistake that people that make a lot of money have a lot of money. Those are two different things. And Robert Kiyosaki in his books
Nails it.
addresses that very thing. You can't earn $800,000 a year and spend it all and expect to become wealthy.
That's exactly
You
right.
must live on less than you earn. And doctors have a hard time doing that when they first get started because of the diabetic neuropathy and the sudden jump in income without any lessons about what do you do when you have a high income? What are the pieces you need to put into place to make sure that things, do I need different insurance now? Well, how much of this can I spend? How much of it do I need to save for my retirement? I got a 10-year late start getting started on investing for my retirement. Does that matter? All of these things make the physician in a different position than people believe. They just see, oh man, that guy is a doctor. He makes $600,000 a year. He must be rich. And you know what? If you can't make your Ford Pinto payment or you can't make your airplane payment, you're in the same boat.
More people need to hear
So
that. Well said. Um, One thing that came to mind whenever you were speaking there is that, yeah, it's nice to invest in real estate, and it's not to escape being a surgeon. I know people who love being a surgeon, but the guy that we're working with as a client, he said something that was really special. He said, by having freedom and wealth being built while I was at work, I actually loved my job more. I chose which surgeries I wanted to work on. I chose the days that I wanted to work. So it allowed me to love my job even more. Did you notice the same thing? It seems like you started to get into it at a later stage in your career, but now you're helping people do the exact same. So it's not to escape being a doctor, right? People love this profession.
some people do want to escape being a doctor.
Wow. Okay.
Others want, because being a doctor is a tough job. Everybody thinks that okay, when I get done with residency, then my life can start. But it's still a tough job even after residency. It's just not as tough, but it's still tough. So there are people, probably around a third of all doctors kind of would like to get out or do something or cut back or something like that. But most of them want control. What I wanted was a secure retirement. So it was just another investment to me. I have my 401k and I have my real estate. And when I get ready to retire, I will be comfortable. I wasn't looking to quit medicine, but I learned that lesson you talked about if your finances are right, your doctor practice can be right, before I started investing in real estate. It was when I finished paying off my house. Now they started at the same time. I kind of got the house done and bought the real estate the same year. But the thing that changed in my doctor practice is there were two categories of procedure I hated doing. I didn't like it. It was vascular surgery and thoracic surgery, chest surgery. And the reason I didn't like it is those patients were the sickest. They were in the intensive care unit. They generated the most calls. They were more anxiety provoking
Mm,
because they were a sicker, older patient usually as a group. But I hated doing them. The only reason I did them because I had $500,000 of debt, and those are the best paying procedures on my schedule.
Wow. It's a
Okay.
financial move.
The financial reason was why I was doing something I didn't like because it made good money. Okay. And I was afraid to give that up. When I made my final debt payment and my house was paid off and I had no more debts, and at that time, I think I was paying $10,000 a month on debt service. All of a sudden, I didn't need $10,000 a month of net income, which is about $15,000 a month of earned income, which is close to, that's about $180,000. It's like I could take $180,000 pay cut at work and not notice it. Okay.
Yeah.
When I realized that I'm now out of debt, if my income goes down, I'm not at risk of losing my house. So why am I still doing those procedures I don't like? And I went into the office manager. I said, from now on, if I get a consult for a vascular surgery, I want you to give him to this partner because he loves doing vascular surgery. I don't want any more. When I get a thoracic surgery consult, I want you to give it to this partner because he loves doing those. I don't want to do them anymore. I'm done with those. And let the chips fall. We'll see how much it costs me. Well, it turns out it didn't cost me anything, because when those cases got displaced to my partners, they already were full. They had to displace something back to me. So I got rid of something I didn't like, and they had to give me back something I did like. So I enjoyed my practice better. I wasn't doing these things I didn't like, all because I got my financial act together.
Amazing.
And finances was no longer driving my decision making. I now picked things to do because I liked doing them. My practice I like so much better after I gained control of my finances, such when I became debt free. Now, there's one step. Then there's another step when the day I realized that, my real estate is now making more money per year than being a full-time surgeon. So my full-time job is making less money than this job that I'm putting less than 10 hours a week into. That was an eye-opening moment. What do we do about that? Well, we didn't do anything because I still like being a doctor. But I just realized, holy cow, this real estate thing is really, really paying off, because we were never using any of our real estate profits to live on.
Wow.
All of the real estate profits, because I didn't need them. I had my doctor income.
Right.
And my wife and I, here's a secret. My wife and I actually only lived on half of our income.
That's a Jay
Half
Leno
of
approach. I
our,
remember him saying that. Do you ever hear how Jay Leno said that? He
I
only
didn't
lived
hear
off of
Jay Leno say
one.
that. No.
He had his stand-up specials, and he would travel the country, wouldn't spend a dime. Everything that he was spending came from his late show income.
Right.
So if you have
That's how we
multiple
did
income
it.
streams, yeah,
And we did it when we got married. I got married. I was a resident. I was making $21,000 a year. And then I got married, and my wife, I think her first job when we were married, she was making like $25,000 a year. I was already living on my 21, and along comes her income, but adding her to my house didn't really change our expenses much. And so we made the conscious decision we would continue to live on just one income, and the other income just goes in the bank. It's going to be saved for the future. And so we set out from the day we got married that we will live on half of our income. The rest gets put away for the future. And so since I didn't need the money from my real estate, because I was living on half of my doctor income, I took the other half of the doctor income and the money the real estate was making, and it just kept going back into real estate. And so it was paying down the debt. So things were getting more and more. There was a break point, and this is something I teach people who want to be in real estate. Before you start, decide what your end point is.
Great point. Great idea.
Why are you doing this? Okay, I'm doing this because I want a secure retirement. That's why I'm doing it. Okay, so one day we owned our 64 rental units. I was out looking at another one, and I brought home and I showed my wife, and I showed her. Now my wife's an accountant. Okay, I
Great
showed
team.
her, oh, I'm looking at this new property right here. And she said, why are you doing that? I said, well, because I want to get another one. I want to get another one. I had real estate fever. I want to get another one. This is great. This is working. I want to get another one. And she said to me, We already have enough real estate to take care of us for the rest of our life. Why are you looking for more? We already reached that endpoint we set at the beginning.
Total freedom. Correct. Yeah.
We are done. Now, at that moment, my real estate wasn't making enough cash flow for us to be retired, but it was doing this. Rents are going up, we're
Paying
paying
down
off
debt.
debts,
Yep.
and you can project and see that there was a date that I wanted to retire. It was when I turned 50. That was my date from when I was in medical school. When I'm 50, I want to retire from medicine and I'll do some other stuff. And so we were projecting to retire at 50. And when you project that out, we had more than enough real estate to take care of us very nicely when we reached 50. Why are you looking for more? And I thought, well, why am I looking for more? When my son just finished a race this last weekend, a Spartan race, 30 miles long with 60 obstacles to go over. Okay. That's a long race.
Mm-hmm.
When he crossed the finish line, you know what he did? He stopped.
He knew his finish line. Good point.
It's done. I don't have to keep running. It's over with. You stop. Okay. I had crossed the finish line, but I hadn't really noticed it because it's on paper. And she pointed it out. Look, you don't have to buy any more units. In fact, if we pay the ones off we got, we'll be way past what we need in our retirement years. We've already overshot what we need. And so we stopped buying. I never bought another piece of real estate after that. And that was around 2008. This happened right before the real estate crash.
Wow.
So had I kept buying, I would have got to buy properties at super cheap prices because they just crashed and I can pick up these great properties. But it doesn't matter that there were super great bargains out there. We didn't need any more of it. It already accomplished our goals. I didn't need to go buy more simply because they were on sale. And so we stopped. And lo and behold, when it came time for me to retire, I had more than enough money from the real estate that I didn't really even need the 401k money. That's just bonus. And then pretty soon I'm going to start getting Social Security money too, a more bonus. And so if you start with your end in mind, it will maybe make the race less hard because you know where the finish line is. And you don't just have to keep buying more and buying more and buying more and buying more.
That's great.
I see a lot of people that get into real estate and they say, got 100 units now under my belt. And I'm thinking, why? What is your goal here? You trying to beat Trump?
Yeah, you're not making your life any easier. If you've already hit your end point, your freedom stage, why keep doing it? Other than if you really want to make an impact in the legacy of your great grandkids, right? That's the only thing I can think of.
That wasn't my endpoint.
Right?
Right? My endpoint, if that's your endpoint, then you're going to go about it differently.
Right.
If your endpoint is a comfortable retirement, you're going to do differently. If your endpoint is just so enough money so I can go to halftime, so I don't have to work so hard, you're going to go about it differently.
When did you write your first book? Now, my assumption is by hearing this story, the moment you were set free, it was like, now it's time to turn around and serve others and help other people become free. So did this come after you hit your endpoint?
That you're exactly right.
Okay. The reason why I asked that, the reason why I asked that is because it's a perfect segue into the hero's journey. And anybody listening to this, he lived the hero's journey. So if anybody's not familiar with it, Joseph Campbell outlined one of the 3 characteristics of the most popular stories of all time. Are you familiar with this at all, Dr. Cory?
A little bit.
So there's this character who's in this ordinary zone of life. This is the comfort zone. Then eventually goes to stage 2, where this character goes into the new world, where it's very uncomfortable and scary. And that character gets the reward, but gets the reward by going through tests and allies and scary moments, and finds out who that individual is at their very core. And you would think that's the hero's journey, that's the end, but there's actually one more stage where you now have to take this reward, you're a different person, and you now have to serve the many. You have to give back to the group. And what you're doing there is, yes, you got the reward, but there was one extra stage that needs to complete the cycle, which is, let me do this for other people. And I think that's fascinating. So I'm glad that it does work very well with this story
Yes,
that you just outlined.
that is exactly what happened. In fact, I reached age 50 and I told my partner, and my partner actually kind of helped me get to that next step, because I reached age 50 and I had crossed my finish line. Okay, I was going to work until I'm 50, and then I'm going to retire. I have enough money to retire. I mean, I've been planning this since I was in medical school, so I better have enough money by the time I get there, right? And so I have enough money. And I told my partner, I'm going to retire at the end of the year. And he was like 10 years older than me. And he said, okay, what are you going to retire to? Because all of the doctors that I've watched retire without a good plan of what they're going to do with their life, they're back working in 6 months because they gave up a very rewarding something
Purpose.
to go
That's
to
the
nothing.
purpose. Yes.
And you went to nothing. You're out playing golf, and golf gets old after a little while, and you want to do something of purpose. And so I had always thought, well, I'll figure that out after I retire. And he said, I think you should figure that out before you retire. And so
He's a wise
then
man.
I said, okay, I'm gonna do that. So I set on a quest to figure out, what do I want to do in my retirement years that will give me purpose? So I will feel like I'm contributing to the world. I'm doing so. I'm not just playing golf. I don't want to live my life on my hill of money. I got all this money now. I can sit by the beach and play. Good luck, guys. I didn't want to live like that. I wanted a purpose. And so what I did at the next point was, okay, I'm not going to retire yet. I'd still like being a doctor. I was just going to retire because I hit that number. And I told my partners, I'd like to go to halftime. I'd like to work half as much. They said, no, we don't really want a half-time surgeon. We want all full-time surgeons. And if you want to do that, you should probably just retire and let us get a full-time guy to replace you. And so I set out to do I did. I left the practice and I worked half-time working in small communities that only had one surgeon. And I would go in for a week and said, let me take your practice, give you the week off. I'm going to give you a breather. I got it. You take the week off, get healthy, because you're on 24/7. He's the only surgeon in town in these little towns. And so I set out for 3 years. I did that. I went to little towns. And so I was now working less hard while I was kind of saying, well, what do I really want to do with my life? That's when I began to write my book series. I turned out really well financially, and everybody's always asking me questions about how I did it. Why don't I just write the books and show them how I did it, and lead them where I got to successfully? And so that's how I started writing the books. My first book won an award for nonfiction book of the year. And as my wife and I were driving home from that award ceremony, I said, maybe that's a sign that it's time to go ahead and let go of medicine and move ahead to this other thing completely.
The new chapter.
And I put in my 90-day notice and said, I'm going to go ahead and not do this anymore. I've got stuff booked out, 90 days. I'm not going to book anymore. At the end of the last thing I have scheduled here, I'm done. So in February of 2017, I left the hospital for the last time. And at that time, I had 2 books published already, and one of them about to come out. And I left my medical practice to become basically a money coach for physicians and other high income people, and to continue to write a series of books on different topics to where I can give you what I learned on this whole journey. And so one of the things that's different about me is a lot of people who write books on this are telling you what they're going to do. This is my plan. Let me show you what my plan is. And my whole approach is, I already did it. Let me show you how to succeed. This is what I did. And if you just duplicate that, you're going to be where I'm at. And so watch who you get your advice from. I've seen people literally. So I retired on real estate income before I wrote a book on real estate. I have seen people buy their first piece of real estate, their very first house, first rental house, and then develop an online course to teach people how to buy real estate. And
Yep.
I'm looking at them thinking like, but dude, you don't know what you're talking about. You just bought your first one. You haven't learned anything yet about what this is going to be like over time. So be careful who you get your advice from. You don't want to get your advice so much from people who want to do the thing. Get your advice from people who've already done whatever it is you want to do. You want to become a doctor? You should go talk to a doctor, not another guy in medical school or not a guy in college who wants to become a doctor also. That's not where you get your advice. You go to the guy who's already finished residency. He's been in practice for 5 years. Ask him about being a doctor because he knows.
Great point there. I bought my first piece of real estate. It was a 4-unit simply because I went to the Rich Dad Poor Dad seminar after I reading the book, and I bought my first property. And if I could go back in time, I probably would have wrote a book on what not to do because I did everything the wrong way. So
it's after you learn all those lessons that you want to begin writing your book.
yeah,
It takes years to pick up enough of those things that go wrong stories.
yeah,
One of the things, I have a section in my book about the reluctant landlord, and people talk to me about, why does real estate have a bad name? You see, if I went up to somebody and said, they say, what do you do? And I said, hey, I'm a surgeon. Wow, your parents are really proud. Oh, that's really cool. You guys make a lot of money. They tell me all these great things. But if I said, I'm a real estate investor. Oh, you buy that? You do that? Oh, I can't believe you do that. I mean, I would never do something like that. And they go on with you'll get calls in the middle of the night. I mean, what if
fixing
somebody tears up your place?
toilets.
And so if I mention I'm a real estate investor, I almost always get a long list of why it's a stupid idea to be a real estate investor.
Mm-hmm.
If I mention I'm a surgeon, I get a long list of what a great thing you're doing. But nobody ever says, oh, you don't want to be a surgeon. You're going to be up all night. You're going to have zillions of loans. You're never going to be able to pay for them. People are going to spit on you in the emergency room because they're high on coke and you're supposed to help them. Or, no one does that about. So why do they do it about real estate?
Right.
Well, I think it's because of the reluctant landlord, because everybody knows somebody who didn't really set out to be a real estate investor, didn't set out to be a landlord, who ended up with a house they couldn't sell. And so they decided they'd rent it. Okay. And so you got a job change. It's a bad market where you're at. You can't sell the house for what you want. So you're going to rent it out. You're going to become a landlord and then you're going to move. Okay. And guess what? It didn't go well. You didn't buy that property as an investment property. You bought it as a home. Those are different criteria. You don't know what you're doing. You're trying to run it all yourself and you don't know how. And you're surprised it didn't work out well. But then you go tell all your friends how horrible real estate investing is. But you don't even know what you're talking about.
Right.
You got thrust into something, you didn't want to get into it, but now that you've been thrust into it, you think you have enough knowledge to teach other people how bad this is. And so you're running around bad mouthing real estate. Well, everybody knows those stories. Everybody knows somebody who's like that. But the successful guy in real estate isn't running around telling everybody how good it is. No, bad news sells. Just look at the news tonight.
Yeah. What
How
gets
many
people
great,
talking?
nice,
Negative
appealing
energy.
articles are you going to see them report? No, they're going to report on the bus crash and the guy who got shot and, the market's down. It's all bad news sells. Nobody talks about the good stuff. They only talk about the bad stuff. So you get this horrible feeling about being a landlord. What a terrible thing to be. I watched my grandmother do it. Every other relative looked at her and said, I don't want to do that. That's stupid. Think of all that time she wastes over there at those places. Those places are dumps. Those people tear them apart. But not one of them says, gosh, she doesn't have to work.
It's funny. You only see what you want to see, basically. And one thing I've learned after interviewing hundreds of entrepreneurs, working with them on their books, it depends on what you're looking for. It sounds like you're a single family guy. You like single units. There are people out there who are just multifamily investors. Maybe you are
I
into
don't
that
know.
too.
I do not own any single family investments.
Oh, what are these 64 units? Are they multifamily then?
They're all multifamily.
Oh,
My very first investment was a 31 unit apartment complex that I bought with no money down, cash back at closing, and it cost over $1 million. That was my very first real estate investment.
incredible. Get into this here real quick because I thought it sounded 64 units. Maybe everybody got to check
64 doors is 4 apartment complexes.
Got it. Very interesting. Okay.
So I only made, in my whole real estate venture, I only made 5 rental purchases.
Unbelievable.
5 apartments.
Unbelievable. Very
5.
good.
And so I hired, I got a realtor. Here's a key to success. You get a realtor who is a real estate investor.
Yes. There's a
not
difference.
Somebody who sells houses.
There's a difference.
Okay. He knows what you're looking for. Then you tell him, and I put this in the book, step by step, how you do this. Tell him what you want to buy. Okay. And then let him go find it. Let him earn his money. You don't have to go run around looking for stuff. Okay. You'll hear people talk about, oh yeah, you need to make 100 offers to get one that sticks. Who's got enough time to waste to make 100 stupid offers? This is how I did it. I sent that guy out with my criteria. Basically, I wanted to buy a plum multifamily apartment. Come tell me when you got one. He only showed me 2 to 3 places a year that met my criteria. I only had to look at 2 or 3 possible purchases a year, and each year I bought one of them. Okay. He would evaluate it. Yes, it meets my criteria. Then he'd show it to me. I'd look it over. I'd recheck my criteria, make sure I'd check the cash flow estimates. I like this one. Let's make them an offer. We would make them a good offer, one that they wouldn't turn down. We never lowballed people. That's where you waste a bunch of time making 30 offers to get one accepted. Don't lowball people. Give them a fair price for their property, and you make one deal that year. And then he goes off looking for me another one. And a year later, I bought one more. A year later, I bought one more. I bought 5 total. One of those I bought in a partnership with a bunch of relatives to try and teach them about real estate. And we were going to keep it for a certain number of years and then sell it. And that's been sold for a profit. And so I still have the 4 that I purchased.
Wow.
But you don't have to go out and buy a bunch of stuff. I bought 5 times I purchased an investment piece of real estate, and it's taken care of me for the rest of my life, and it will take care of my kids and my grandkids for the rest of their lives.
Truly
you
incredible.
Don't have to buy a bunch of stuff.
And so, yeah, what I wanted to talk about was you got to figure out which vehicle it suits your personality. And whenever I got into real estate, I was into multifamily, 4 units, smaller units. And then I started thinking, well, why don't I just syndicate with for multifamily, bigger ones? And then I fell in love with self-storage. So my bread and butter is self-storage. I just love it. No toilets, nothing. So that's my baby. But you found out pretty quick what you are drawn to, and there will always be a demand for it. And if you buy right, like you said, you don't have to buy many. I'm glad you brought that up. And you are all about multifamily. It seems to be like most of my clients.
That's all. I do not think you should buy single family homes. The reason is if you buy 10 single family homes, because you want to be some diversified. That way, if somebody leaves, you're only 10% vacant, right? So let's say you buy 10 single family homes. You have 10 roofs.
Yeah.
You have 10 garbage collecting
and
bills.
electric bills.
10 water bills. You have 10 electric bills. You have, okay. If you need to fix something, they're all over town. There's 10 places all over town. You got to go for something. Okay. Contrast that with you bought one 10-plex. You got one roof. You got one garbage bill. You got one electric bill. If you need to fix something, you can fix 3 or 4 things at the same stop.
Great.
It is so much nicer, it's more economical. The more units that there are in the purchase, the smaller the price per door is. But the rent per door will be about the same. So you make more money. There's an economy of scale when you buy multifamily. And so the reason that people buy single family is because it's familiar.
Yep.
You bought a house, you know
It's
how this
not too
works.
scary.
You live
Great
in
point.
one.
Yeah.
It's not scary. I don't know, oh man, a 10-plex, how am I going to do? 10-plex is easy. It's just the same work to run a 10-plex as it is to run one single family home. Okay. I did one time purchase instead of 10 real estate purchases, and who knows how many offers to get those 10 purchases. I made maybe 2 offers to get 1 purchase. I'm done. I got my 10 units. I now cultivate those and make them pay off.
Yep.
Now
And take
the
notice
real
of what he
estate
just said.
course,
Yeah. To the listeners out there, take notice of what he said. Find a real estate investor agent who will bird
yes,
dog for you, find the properties, and then you do not have to run around town looking at all of them. You find 2 or 3 per year, and you do this once every year, which will create the freedom and the wealth that you deserve. And it's just that easy, right? You don't have to do it every day, every week. It's a slow process, right? It's
this
don't
is why I say the book is for busy professionals, because they all think they're too busy for it. But if you do it the way I showed you, you're not too busy for it. No one is too busy to make 1 real estate offer a year.
there's
You
a great
know,
quote one of my clients said, "Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait." And that's the key to success and
absolutely.
wealth, right?
So
Beautiful.
when we bought that first 31 unit with no money down, in fact, I said, this is the offer we're going to make him. My investment realtor said, there's no way they're going to take that offer. It's a really cool story. I wrote a whole chapter about that one first purchase and all the lessons you can learn from this. But I interviewed the seller before we made the offer. I knew exactly what the seller wanted to do.
Find their
He was
motivation.
selling his property so that he could get on a boat and sail around the world. Okay. So
It's a
he
motivated
wanted his
seller.
boat. He wanted to get his house paid off. He wanted his boat paid off. He wanted to get on the boat and have money coming in. Okay. So when I made the offer, I also told my realtor, I'm going to make the offer in person to him. And you 2 realtors, yeah, you can sit in the room if you want. I'm not giving you the offer to give to his realtor to give to him. I'm making the offer directly to him. And he says, my realtor says, well, that's not the way we do it. I said, well, that's the way I do it. And I'm the one who's buying the property. So we're going to make this offer. And I showed him the offer we're going to make. And the reason I wanted to make the offer, because there was a way I wanted it presented. And I knew the realtor wouldn't do that. He'd just hand him the paper.
Right. They look at the
Um,
number and there's no emotional attachment. And that
there's no
individual who
emotion to it.
built that property or focused on it for so many years, they want to hand it off to someone who they know, like, and trust also.
That's exactly what this guy was like. This was his baby. It was owned completely, and so I showed my offer to my realtor, and the realtor said, he's never going to take that. No one would take that offer. I said, well, I'm going to make it anyway. He said, you're wasting your time. I'm going to make this offer. So I walked into the room and this was the offer I made him. I want to give you enough cash down so that you can pay off your house and you can pay off the boat, because I knew how much those were. You can pay off your boat, and I'm going to give you an extra 50,000 to get your boat outfitted and make sure that you have all of the things you forgot that maybe you needed. You didn't realize that. I'm going to give you 50,000 extra to take care of that. Then I want you to carry the note on the property. And that way, every month, I will deposit the payment into your account personally. And wherever you are in the world sailing around on your boat, just go to an ATM to get your money so you can keep doing what you're doing. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world. I'll take care of making sure the money goes into your account every month. And this is how much money a month I'll be putting in your account. So I'm going to give you your house paid off, your boat, how to outfit the boat, and this much money a month into your account. That's my offer. Guess what was missing in the offer?
What? What could it be?
What's the price?
Yeah.
I didn't add any of that stuff up. I just said, I'm going to give you everything you're asking for. I didn't
Amazing.
give him a price. The price was $150,000 less than what he was asking for. Because he thought that 1.3 million would get him what he wanted, right?
Right.
I gave him everything he wanted, but it totaled up to 1.15 million, $150,000 less than his offer, than his asking price. When I finished my proposal, I said, "What do you think?" And the first thing he did was he got his calculator out to add all that stuff up and figure out how much money I just offered him for the property, right? Because when I showed my realtor this, the only thing he looked at was 1.15 million. And he
You're
says, he's
solving a
asking 3
problem.
million.
You were
He's
solving a
not gonna,
problem. He's looking at a number.
I found out what his problems were. I found out what he wanted, and I walked right into the thing, and I'm going to give you everything you want. And he took it. And my realtor later told me, if I'd have known he was going to take that, I would have bought that property for that,
150K
but
less.
he
What a
probably
win.
wouldn't have taken it if I just gave the offer to him and it says it's 1.15 million, because then he would have said, yeah, but I need 1.3 to get what I want. But that wasn't true. I could give him what he wanted at 1.15.
Okay.
And he took the deal. And so the next time my realtor got ready to, he showed me one. I said, yeah, let's make an offer on this one. My realtor asked me, so when do you want to make the offer to the owner? he he was going to let me make all the offers in person from then on. And when do you want to meet the owner for the offer?
Well, you bring up a good point there. People think it's a real estate business and that's all it is, bricks and mortar and all that. But what it is a people business. And you tapped into that.
Mhm.
You found out what they were really searching for, and that's their freedom. And if you can satisfy that, you can get the property. And that's crucial for anybody listening,
Yeah,
right? It's a people business first. And if you focus on that, you'll notice a lot better results. So we're running out of time, but in addition to your book, question we like to ask our guests: what is another book you recommend? What is a book that changed your life? Me personally, we brought it up earlier, Rich Dad Poor Dad. It put me on a whole different path. And so I will always thank Robert
Mhm.
Kiyosaki for doing that. Is there a book that stands out in your mind that is
Yes,
almost like a defining moment?
yes. There are two defining moments books for me. One is Rich Dad Poor Dad, which was the same for you.
Incredible.
The other one was Millionaire Next Door. That is probably even better than Rich Dad Poor Dad to
Wow.
me.
Okay.
Or have you read The Millionaire
I've
Next
read
Door?
Millionaire Next Door.
Okay.
There's a lot of people in
Um,
my circle who would go against that philosophy, by the way. So I
I
don't know
don't
how I
care.
feel. It's a very Ramsey like book, right? So that's why there's a Robert
You know what it
Kiyosaki.
is? It's what really is there. This whole book is about interviewing millionaires and telling you what they're really like. What is a millionaire look like? Because it's just like you said in the beginning of this. Everybody thinks doctors are rich. Everybody thinks millionaires are rich and they got airplanes and stuff like that. That's not true. What that book explained is there everybody can be a millionaire.
Right.
It's not like you got something special and you have to have a hit record or you have to win a boxing match, or everybody can be a millionaire. Millionaires are just regular people who did the right kind of stuff for a long period of time and they became wealthy. And that's why that book resonated so much to me. Um, I would have said the opposite, by the way. I would have said Robert Kiyosaki's book is more Ramsey-ish. It's like,
Wow, you'd say that. I think Kiyosaki
yeah,
and Ramsey butt heads.
he's yeah, you can butt heads, but be doing the same thing. Uh, you know, um, they're both selling you on the idea they think is best, and they're making their way sound better, and they make the other way sound worse than it really is. The thing that the millionaire next door did was he told you, this is what we found out. They did
Fascinating.
interviews with these guys and showed you, this is what we found out. Millionaires don't own Rolex watches. They
Right.
own Timex watches. I thought millionaires,
Casio G-Shocks. Yeah.
the thing that caught my eye the most was that there's one quote. It's one quote from that book that sums up that book to me. And that was in the setting when the guy went to Texas to meet this big millionaire guy, big wheeler dealer that he was working with, and he'd never met him. And he walks into the room and he looks around and says, "That guy, oh yeah, that must be him." And he goes up to the millionaire and he starts to talk to him, and immediately he knows this ain't the guy. This ain't him. And he asked somebody, "Where is this guy at? Where's him?" "Oh, that's him over there." And he said, "That guy? He looks like the janitor." He says, "Yeah, that's him." And so he goes, and then he says, "Well, who's that guy over there?" The guy who he thought was the millionaire. And the guy tells him, "Oh, him. Yeah. Big hat, no cattle."
I
That
love it.
sums up the Millionaire Next Door book to me.
It's great.
Big hat,
No
no cattle.
cattle.
You don't want to be that guy.
Bingo.
You want to be the guy who owns all the cattle.
Very unassuming.
And
I'm
that's
with you on
what
that.
I took home from that book. So
Thank
that's
you very
why
much
it's
for
one of
that.
my favorites.
Dr. Cory Fawcett, the book, guys, I recommend it. I have not read it, but this guy, after talking to him, he obviously knows his stuff. We share very much the same core values. The Doctor's Guide to Real Estate Investing for Busy Professionals. It's been an honor to talk with you, sir. And
Hey, thanks. It was a lot of fun.
is there
Hey,
any?
I got a bunch of other books we can talk about someday.
You're
know?
gonna have to come back on. We'll talk more about some of the getting out of debt. I'm a big believer in that too. So, is there a way to
That
get
changed
in
my
touch
life.
with you?
Yeah.
Is there a way to get
Yes.
in touch with you? A website?
My
or?
website is financialsuccessmd.com. And so if you need to email me, it's md@financialsuccessmd.com, and you get directly to me. You don't get any minions who take care of it. When I set you up to do coaching, it's one-on-one with me. I don't have minions who do my coaching for me. It's me.
No
So
minions.
no minions. You can't learn as much from a minion as you can from the guy who taught the minion. So
Beautiful. Guys, get in touch
I
with
like
him.
to do it in person. So
I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And guys, $1 million book will lead to $1 million life. Right on.